The art of success in today's business is mostly about value creation. What value creation does, it basically segregates from commodities to value-added products and services. Those countries that have understood the art of value creation have produced very successful products. They can brand them properly, they can package them properly, they can understand the consumerism, the value, and then most importantly, they acquire assets and intellectual property along the process, and that gives them a special profitability, a special markups, and a special longevity in the market, and they become a real big player. Take a look at any major 50 or 100 master brands in the market and you will see it. We have with us Claire Novak, an expert, somebody who not only travels around the globe, but a lot of people may not know that she has spent a few years in Pakistan as a senior executive on very interesting projects, Claire. Huh? So,
That's
Claire, I'm here. Please talk about it. Please reflect. We are basically in the space of value creation and how different methodologies and different ideas can make a business shine. Please, your thoughts.
With 25 years of working in businesses, clearly one of the things I've seen about value creation is the ability of leadership to focus on a direction and transparently share with their employees what the direction is so the employees can make good decisions over their work. That leads to higher engagement, higher productivity, and a higher quality product for the consumer because the employee is focused and knows what to do in the right way because leadership has shared that. So I think that's a grand contribution to value creation, is a leadership that knows where it's going and communicates it well to its team.
How do you relate some of this to a country like Pakistan, where not only you have spent some time, but in your international travel, you see some similarities of what are the typical characteristics of the emerging economies and also the mid-sized businesses within these emerging economies?
Emerging economies do have a lot in common. There's both challenges and opportunity there. And the companies in emerging markets that really can grab the opportunity are the ones that do have leadership focus, that have a clear brand that is perceived as valuable once the companies move into additional markets. That, again, comes back to the basic, do you have a quality product that's the right product to fill a need for the consumer? And I've seen a lot of creativity in emerging markets that can really grab hold because they see an opportunity that may not be readily visible in a nation that pretty much is running and developed and staying on an even level. I think there's opportunity in some disruption so that there are grand opportunities to notice what the consumer wants, identify a need, and grow the business to meet it.
How do you see the features of longevity that a corporation, like what we talk in our quadruplicity processes, how do you see longevity playing a role in going towards the future?
That's a great question. And there are businesses doing it very, very well in that they have a clear brand, a quality product, global penetration, and leadership that evolves and adapts in each generation. A good example, Bata shoes. They have been around 120 years. Clearly, they learn to adapt because people aren't wearing the same kind of shoes 120 years later. They offer a good value for price, and through that, they get 1 million customers a day purchasing Bata shoes. And this is 120 years after the founding. Why? They have focus. They have a value proposition called Bata Life, which means that the company treats its employees respectfully, the community respectfully, and the people who can shop there respectfully and well, and in a way that helps sustain our world. So to me, longevity and adaptability actually go hand in hand. It's multi-generational businesses have to adapt to have longevity.
How do you create and how do you bring in the younger, or what we call the next generation leaders, how do you bring this about, and how do they turn, and what point you think they see these longevity as a key component? But I guess you have just said it, because they have a brand. So those businesses which are in commodity, they have no brand, so they don't see longevity. So what they see is only bottom line, perhaps money. If they make money, they are fine. If they don't money, they are bad. But when you have a brand and that's growing on a national, international scene, you have a very different psyche, very different vision, and a very different set of goals. But how do you create that? How do you bring the younger generation into this thinking?
I've seen a number of family businesses very successfully pass on from generation to generation. What I have seen them do is to bring the next generation into the business and let them work in multiple parts of the business. Rather than immediately putting them in leadership, let them learn the product. Let them get out, if it's manufacturing, in the manufacturing field, to get to know the employees. And also, very importantly, the next generation is going to understand the next generation of consumers. So be willing to listen and adapt to good ideas from the next generation as they're coming up in the organization. Involve them. They're going to see things that the current leadership may not see. They're going to understand better how people who are their peers purchase. For example, just you think about the way we purchase. Now there's apps, there's touch screens, there's things that have replaced the old paper receipt from 50 years ago. The younger generation in a long, live organization will become involved. And not every child in the next generation will want to be involved, but that's fine. The ones who share the vision, share the passion, bring them in, listen to them, respect their opinions, and give them the power to begin learning and assuming authority in the business.
You said something very powerful, that next generation is the one that will be dealing with the next generation.
Yeah.
They are the one who will be selling them, they are the one who will be dealing with them, they are the one who will be handling, and they will be the leaders of that next generation. Now, businesses here, and I'm sure you know that how businesses here, once they get a big factory, they automatically get a big house and a big car, but not necessarily a big business. Big factories are not big businesses. Big factories are big buildings, big houses are structures, and big cars are automobiles. Big businesses are those that are responsible, providing prosperity to a large of people, producing value, and creating economical impact. If businesses are only supposed to deliver big houses and big cars and nothing to the bottom, which is a common issue in the emerging economy, there is such a disparity between the upper layer and the bottom, and there is just massive discrepancy. So businesses really have to understand that if they want to create their success, they have to create success at the bottom. So the bottom becomes their consumers, And then the more consumers buy, it benefits both sides of the equation. What good is it to have a massive, huge factory with a million poor people working who cannot support education, Medicare, all kinds of things that are essential, which we consider in the West critically essential, and they are not there? How can they go out and buy their expensive shoes and clothes and food or whatever? So I think Pakistan is at that transition, and the new government is thinking along that line, and the new agenda is to try to bring the grassroots. At Expothon, we have accepted grassroots prosperity as our number one challenge. We believe that grassroots prosperity is the basis to create a solid economical model. It's a very common sense. And we learned all that in the good old American model, that how very successfully it was created for the whole generation of middle-class families and middle-class prosperity and so on. Our challenge here in Pakistan is for mid-sized businesses to understand and say, we are already successful, but our next generation, are they really trained and equipped to cope with the future? And if tomorrow things were to change or grow rapidly, do they have the expertise to tackle those changes? So on that issue, how do you bring adaptability, and how do you bring about what we call the successional value? That how do you bring this, carrying the torch forward, that at what point the old management will say, we have realized that we have reached to the top. Because businesses here have really reached their top, because they lack organizational growth potential, they lack the human resource capital, they lack the innovative and intellectual capital to outburst into the next layer. And these are the frightening challenges that in these debates we are discussing, and we are bringing it all about. So what are some of your thoughts on it?
That is an excellent point. When we have leaders who can look into the future, even if it's the next generation, their own families running the business in the future, thinking broadly, what value do we create for the next 3 generations? And that means also creating value for their workforce. Reasonably paid workers who have access to training to become more productive, to become better at their job. You're exactly correct. The more money in their pockets, the more money they have to spend on goods. Poor people cannot afford to buy. Therefore, building a strong middle class gives companies better educated, more productive workers, which in turn gives a business the tools to break out of a local market into a much wider market, because people will voluntarily add more to that business. They will choose to work harder. They will choose to bring good ideas. They will choose to be creative and help that business expand. Once they understand the business is in it for the long term, for my own good, yes, and also the common good. And that the business means to be there and means to add value to the community through corporate social responsibility, which I think is a huge factor in many organizations, is choosing community in order to grow.
Claire, it's an amazing challenge. It is a very interesting and a very colorful and a very dynamic transition, especially what's going on in Pakistan. So many positive things are coming together. The China, the economic opportunities that it's creating, and the world is looking for newer solution, and a lot of young people with technology. We had a great discussion in earlier session on technology and alpha dreamers and multinationalization and all that. And 12-hour marathon provides a very, very powerful summation to what the agenda here is. I'll be looking forward to our further discussions as we go along in our program. And I want to thank you from United States for you to find this time to come and join us. We will continue our debate, and later on we will have a lot of discussion. And to all those 50,000 industry people watching this across the nation, I think it will be a lot of fun and a lot of follow-up that's going to come about it. I want to thank you for your time, and goodbye from Karachi. All the best.
Have a good evening.
What is multinationalization? Multinationalization is a sophisticated understanding that how a small, medium business can operate and function with or without any extra cost, like a multinational organization. Years ago, decades ago, it was an impossibility. Only mega organization had the capability to do things, but today a small business, a very, very small business, should they desire, they can find ways and means to expand their wings in multiple continents, in multiple countries, with fascinating ease, and set up their operation to achieve high level of efficiency. It's very simple, but it requires some understanding. I have Brenda Crompton from Canada, and she is not only an expert on multinationalization, but as a consultant, as a coach, as an expert, she has a lot of experiences. So my first question to you, Brenda, what are some of the challenges when a small business wants to go try to expand in multiple countries and try to create a presence from a structure and organization point of view? So please share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, the biggest challenge with moving beyond your local community is really in understanding the culture and the way that people operate in other communities. So whether it be across the country, like Canada is a large country, we have different cultures in different parts of the country, or other countries. Business is about people. And so ultimately, it's about being able to communicate what you want to convey in a way that the other person understands. Communication is not about what I say, it's about what you hear. So that's the biggest challenge in going multinational, is in gaining that understanding of the culture of the market that you want to approach, and particularly of the individuals that you want to speak to and help with your business, and understanding what is the best way to communicate with them.
It is true, and like we just talked about, that how languages play such an important aspect. I think languages is perhaps the biggest fear, although English and internet, both in harmony, are amazing tools. And with English, you could literally survive in three-quarter, almost, or maybe more than three-quarter of the world today. But, for example, in Canada, we are so used to finding 50 or 100 different languages without any effort, because we have such a long history of immigrants coming from all over the globe for the last 50, 100 years. So we have very sophisticated understanding of foreign languages and how they have given us the grassroots level. For example, in Pakistan, outside the local, colloquial, and provincial languages, it is very difficult to find Finnish and German and Polish and Ukrainian and all that, because we just don't have that population. But for businesses here, for them to try to open to EU, Africa, to other parts of the globe, other parts of the continent, language is quite a challenge. So what are some of your experiences, or what do you think to people who have good products and ideas but are a little bit shy and they just don't know how to open new markets?
Yeah, well, there's two aspects to that. Firstly, especially if you're used to a certain way of being, approach people that are different with a sense of curiosity. Because it's not just about the language that they speak, it's about the ways that they're used to doing things, the order in which they're used to approaching new connections, the order in which they're used to approaching solving problems. So it's a sequencing thing. There's a whole bunch of aspects to it outside the languaging. And I think the key to that is to approaching it all with curiosity and inquiry. Because personally, I find it fascinating. Like when I travel, I like to spend time in a place to really get to know, like, how do the people here live? What's important to them? How do they socialize? How do they like to greet one another? What are their values and the virtues of the people in the community that I want to do business with? So that's what's key. And being from a city like Toronto, which is the most multicultural city in the world, I think has given me that unique perspective about approaching people where they are. And the reason to do it is because when you have a business offer or a service or a way of transforming the way people do something in their lives, then those people are missing out if you don't bring that to them. If you just keep that offer to yourself, then there's all these people that you actually have the opportunity to really influence their lives and their businesses. So why hold that back from them? Instead, go at it with a sense of curiosity. Find that middle ground where, like a dance, where you're communicating with the new group or the new people, and finding that place in between where you both can understand and see the value that you have to bring.
I guess it's so true. For example, a lot of people, ask 100 people, who invented or which country invented global branding? And a lot of people will say United States. But global branding was really invented in Japan. They brought the most sophisticated concept. They were the first one who used instruction guides in multi-languages that were packaged inside the boxes because they were cognizant that nobody would only be reading either Japanese or English. They realized that they are Portuguese and Russian and Chinese and whatnot, and they put out extraordinary, meticulous effort to produce that material. And in my work, at the global stage, Japan was the first nation that they developed English names for Japanese products and positioned them for the international market. The Sharp and the Toyotas and all that. They took away the Japanese perception, the characters, the alphabets, and converted them into pure, simple English typography, and came with the most simplest design and created that. The rules of global branding were generated and created in Japan. America provided the best battlefield where it got sprinkled on a very large scale, and it became the what we call today the branding. But in the Japanese school of thought, they went out missions where people went and studied that how people did what, how they used their laundromats, and how they used their coin-operated machines, and how they drove the car, and how they dress, and how they sat in restaurants. So they could figure out how to fit their products to fit that culture and style. And they were the first one to came up with the idea of the right handle, because they realized that the people in Europe use this and they do that. They were the one, when I was with General Motors, it took General Motors 15 years extra to invent a coffee cup holder that Japan invented 15 years earlier. So multinationalization, multi-commercialization, this thinking of globe is an art and it's a science. And I think if Pakistan and these emerging economies, if they really look at it as an art, it's a beautiful thing. Imagine if you were responsible to open Fiji or Singapore or Australia. It's a fascinating challenge. So of course they speak English, but with a different style. But of course their cuisine, their art, their culture, their habits. And South
I'd like
America.
to add.
Yes. And the
I'd like
idea.
to add too that there's so much communication that's nonverbal. So I have been immersed in cities and cultures where I did not speak the language, and I was able to communicate, because the vast majority of communication is nonverbal. It's body language, and we can study. Really, what's important to globalization is studying the way that humans communicate that create trust, because ultimately you need to be able to create trust with people in order to do business with them. And so the study of body language and the impact on that and its ability to create trust in different cultures is a really important skill set to adapt.
And I think this fear of language and this unknown that they are different, but at the end they are all the same consumer. They really eat their lunch, different food in a different way, but they all eat lunch. And they all have breakfast and all that. And they all wear clothes. They all wear shoes, different styles, different things. So I think if you understand the globalization, or what we call the novo consumerism, that how the global consumers are behaving, and if you produce material that fits that, then the universe is open for you. If you've got 200 countries open to you, and you've got all these things happening, and you've got 10,000 cities, that's an unlimited market. And I think this is where the magic is. What are some of your additional thoughts for somebody trying to think along these lines and try to go on a multinationalization project of a mid-sized business economy in Pakistan?
Well, I mean, there's just so many ways of doing it. Depending on what your offer is, if you're a skilled individual, you can put yourself on websites like Upwork and Fiverr, where you can offer your skill set to people all around the globe that need that. If you have a business product, there's so many platforms where you can put a business product up for sale, like an actual physical product, and then you can just ship it to anywhere it needs to go around the world. If you want to promote in different languages, there's translating tools that are available so that you can actually write in your own language. You can use a translating tool, and then you can just get someone to check it just to make sure that the translation is 100% accurate, because usually they're about 90% accurate. It means that even if you didn't get someone to check it, most people could understand the meaning, even if the grammar is not quite accurate. It is. And try that for yourself, actually. I love to do that. When I see people's posts on social media in another language, I will translate it just to see what they said. And the difference in word order shows how one language there's different languages put the words in different orders. So, if you read between the lines when you translate it into your own language, then it gives you some insight into the way that other culture thinks about things, because they have things in a different order. And just look at that with curiosity and fascination.
This is good. I tell you what I find a challenge here, and all these people out there listening, that Pakistan primarily has been a commodity exporter. They took their bulk and they ship it out, and they don't really care what happens to the grain, if it comes out at cookies or bread or cake or whatever. So for those younger generations that are trying to enlarge their horizon business with new product development, with new research and new ideas, that how important it is to understand and how easy it is, because if you can do 2 languages and 2 cultures and 2 countries, you can very easily do 25, 50. For example, take a look at any small company in Singapore, Hong Kong. As a routine, they would trade with 50 to 100 countries. They're very comfortable in trading with 100 countries. So in order for Pakistan to stand up to these challenges, the younger generation have to come out of the box and try to look at it and look at the technology, this auto translation, instant international website, instant support, instant communication, on-demand kind of response. So I think it's a great opportunity. Brenda, I'm looking forward to having more discussion with you in coming days. We have a long marathon of this thing. Why we did that is to raise the bar and bring this communication. I'm so glad that you brought some valuable points. Thank you and finding your schedule time from Canada to share with us. I want to thank you. Goodbye from Karachi. Bye now.
Bye.